Hello, and welcome back to the official podcast of the Bison Regional Science Fair BRSF STEMcasts. Today we've got an episode that I'm sure will help out all our aspiring microbiologists and a guest who I'm sure can help us explore the wonderful field of microbiology, Miss Meagan Allardice. Meagan is a researcher who specializes in neurobiology, virology, and immunology, and is currently working to discover the neurological dysfunctions caused by the viral bypass of the blood-brain barrier found in COVID-19 patients. Meagan, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Now let's get straight into the interview. Let's get one of the most important things out of the way first. As a woman in STEM, what would you like to say to empower our female listeners who might just have to overcome the underrepresentation that women have to deal with when it comes to the STEM field?
Yeah, you know what? I think that it's really important to understand that the understanding that, or the sort of previous thought that women were underrepresented in science, or that
Mm-hmm.
science is a male-dominated field, is slowly being crushed by the
Yes,
up-and-coming women in this
that's
field.
true.
I have worked with a lot of really amazing women, and not only in science, but in positions of power in
Mm-hmm.
other fields that are really starting to bridge that gap. And I think it's important to understand that there is no limitation. Women can and do contribute heavily to this field just as
Mm-hmm.
much as our male colleagues. And, I mean, there's no reason that if you go through the proper education, you can't be a part of this field. There's no gender requirement. So,
Right.
I think it's really great to be able to be on here and
Mm-hmm.
and talk to people as someone who has gone through and is doing a master's degree and is well and truly intending to do a career in science. That yeah, there is no gender requirement.
Yeah.
Men and women can both contribute to this field really equally.
I think that also goes into like the whole gender equality situation, stuff like that. And it's really
Absolutely.
important. Yeah, it's really important for women as well as men, but more importantly women because come on. They've
Yeah,
been
and I think
underrepresented
too,
in.
like even in my department, right? So I'm
Mhm.
in the medical microbiology department at the University of Manitoba, and I think probably half, at least half of the
Mhm.
students, masters and PhD students in this research department are women.
Yeah.
So it may be that for now we have more men that are in professor positions and all that kind of stuff, and that's okay. But I think that
Mhm.
it's like medicine. It's no longer going to be a male dominated field in the coming years. It's definitely going to be more equal, and I think that's really important.
Yeah. So on that point, what is exactly microbiology and what does it entail?
So microbiology, probably in the simplest explanation,
Mhm.
is the study of microorganisms, right? So that is whether it's bacteria,
Mhm.
fungi, viruses, obviously is
Yeah.
my specialty. And oftentimes more so looking at the environment, right?
Mhm.
Microorganisms make up microenvironments, and so studying, interactions between microorganisms, studying their behavior. There's so much. The field of microbiology
Mhm.
is really starting to expand,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting.
So you mentioned viruses. So what do you think is I know you guys are doing some research on viruses too. So what do you think is the hardest thing about finding interactions between viruses and human cells or any other stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of limitations. I think viruses are very viruses are very unique,
Mhm.
and they like to be very evasive. So viruses are really good at, and there's a reason why viruses can cause such serious infections,
Mhm.
is they're really good at avoiding detection in our immune system. And they're really good at sort of, they replicate in cells, right? So
Mhm.
viruses need to, whereas like bacteria don't necessarily, they can replicate on their own.
Right.
Viruses can't. So viruses have to get inside some kind of our cell to be able
Mhm.
to replicate and then move on and infect other cells.
Right.
So to detect viruses a lot of the
Mhm.
time inside our own cells is really difficult, right? So
Right.
until people get more seriously infected, we're not always able to detect viral infection, and so studying them can be really complex.
Mhm. And I guess that's why taking or creating the vaccines, which is like a magnitude of difficulty, it's taking quite a long time. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's really interesting that it's, you know commonly they talk about how it takes 10 years to come up with a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've proven that it doesn't,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, if we all just put our heads together,
Mm-hmm.
we can really overcome a lot of the barriers that are in place that make it take 10 years to come up with a
That's true.
vaccine,
Yeah.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
it can be done, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of working together, which
Yeah.
people aren't always good at.
Yeah. So, moving on, what can you do with a microbiology degree? Like, what wonders can you work?
Great question. Uh, so you know what? This is a really important question, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that when you are, and especially when I was in school and in high school, it was,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to be? What job are you
Yeah.
going to get when are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer? Those aren't the only jobs out there.
Mm-hmm.
You can be, you can go into microbiology and you can be an infectious disease doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a physician, but you want to specialize in infectious diseases, you can study, antimicrobial resistant infections,
Mm-hmm.
and work with patients who suffer from those kinds of disorders. You can work on, sexually transmitted infections. You can,
Mm-hmm.
my supervisor is a researcher. We work with emerging viruses, so we do a lot of work on the SARS-CoV-2 virus,
Yeah.
or the COVID-19
Mm-hmm.
virus. Um, you can go into research, you can go into medicine, you can go into industry. I'm doing an internship with Emergent Biosolutions, so I know you
Mm-hmm.
had Corey on before. Corey is my
Yes.
director.
Yeah.
And he, our group looks at trying to make a therapeutic that
Mm-hmm.
is going to work against coronavirus infection. So if you're interested in microbiology, I think that it's hard to say, I like microbiology, I'm going to do this job. I think, you know, you can get any kind of job if
Mm-hmm.
you go to school and you do a microbiology degree, follow it and figure out what you're
Yeah.
interested in, and then see where you end up, because there's millions of jobs you can do.
Right. So on
Yeah.
that note, what advice would you give to aspiring prospective microbiologists?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do, if you like microbiology or you're
Mm-hmm.
interested in microbiology, be curious. Be
Yeah.
so curious. Like, do endless amounts of question periods with
Yeah.
people that are in this field,
Mm-hmm.
or, look into different things that you think are interesting. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to try and read papers, or
Mm-hmm.
read microbiology articles. Find things that you think are really interesting, right? Even when I first got into research,
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was interested in. I just thought microbiome was kind of cool, and I
Yeah.
liked the way that we could kind of look at microorganisms and then
Mm-hmm.
relate them to disease. And then I figured out that I really thought viruses were interesting. And then I figured out that I thought viruses interacting with, our immune system was really
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And you kind of get closer and closer to what you really sort of fires your engine
Yeah.
when you're thinking about these topics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the best thing that you can do is, like, just don't even think about the long term in terms of, well, I have to figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
Be curious and
Mm-hmm.
figure out what you're interested in, and kind of follow that path, because a lot of the time you're going to meet people along the way that are going to go, oh, you really like this? That's cool. That's what I do for a living. Or,
Yeah.
you do this. Or,
Mm-hmm.
if when you're in high school, even when you're early on in university, like, you don't know what job you're going to end up. And even if you do, you're
That's
probably
true.
going to end up switching, right? So
Mm-hmm.
just be curious and follow the path. And, I think you can do so many different things in
Mm-hmm.
microbiology. It's such a widely expanding field.
That's awesome. So you mentioned research too earlier. So let's walk
Yeah.
through the research process. What do you think is good advice to give to somebody who's never written a research paper before and has to conduct research and write a report on it?
Yeah, so it definitely obviously depends on what level you're at.
Mm-hmm.
I think for, say for sort of higher level high school, or even early
Mm-hmm.
year, university, I think people expect that, a research report has to be really complicated. And that's not necessarily true. You're, at the end of the day, a research report, you're trying to conduct some research, figure out what communicate what you learned based on what you've read,
Mm-hmm.
and let your reader properly interpret what you interpreted. So the
Mm-hmm.
most important thing is to be clear, and
Yeah.
you want to have enough content so that it's interesting, but it doesn't have to be a story. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking, for example, if you're looking at the SARS-CoV-2 virus,
Mm-hmm.
read about the virus, read about some of the basics. If you don't understand it, that's okay. Try and find stuff that you do understand so that you can properly communicate that, because at the end of the day, if you write something really complicated that you don't necessarily understand, no one else who reads it is going to understand it either,
Yeah.
right? So you'd rather go a little bit more simple and do a really good job explaining, your topic and what you learned from it and what you understood from it. And then if you want to try and build on it, that's fine. But nail down the basics first. And, I think the important thing is really making sure that you are getting information from a reliable source, right? So a lot of the time, we see articles on Facebook, or we see, a Globe and Mail article and stuff like that. And then those are things you just have to be careful of, is you want sources that are reliable. You don't necessarily have to read, a published scientific paper, because as a master's student, some of those papers I read and go, what? I don't know what that said. So it's difficult to read it when you're earlier on in your scientific career. But even just to read, the World Health Organization has phenomenal information. The CDC has phenomenal information to really just get that basic understanding. That what you're reading is accurate. You can convey it properly. You're in good shape.
Yeah. So adding on to that, what are a couple mistakes you think you made when you were writing a few research papers?
Fantastic question. Oh, what didn't I make a mistake on? Oh my gosh. You know what? You're going to make them, and it's fine. And you make a mistake and you learn and you move on, and, that's totally fine. But I think that one of the mistakes that I made was sort of expanding from what you read, right? So if you read, this is actually a really good example. I saw something on the news the other day that they talked about a scientific study finds that drinking hot chocolate might make you smarter.
Ooh.
No, that's not what they found. What they did was there was a component, there was an ingredient or a chemical that's found in some drinks, such as hot chocolate, which may improve cognitive function. That's what it means. And you stop there. There is hot chocolate does not make you smarter. That's a catchy news line, but it doesn't actually make you smarter.
Oh, right? I wish.
Right? I would be very happy if that was the truth, but that's not how science works.
Sadly.
So expanding. So like, if you read something, what they tell you is what they tell you, right? It's not, oh, this may potentially, okay, well, hot chocolate makes you smarter. No. This chemical may improve cognitive function, period, right? And if you read more information and you can add to it, that's great. But I think one of the biggest mistakes is really not taking science at its word. Like, we can't push further than what the data tells us, right? You do an experiment, or you run a test, you get the results, the data tells you X. Cool. Now we know that. Now we can move on. But it's sort of like, or either reading or extrapolating on that data and saying like, oh, I discovered this. No. just read it and take what it is, and then roll with it a little bit. But I think that's common, is really sort of just like extrapolating based on what you read, and it's not always that clear cut.
So let's move on to what exactly inspired you to start with science.
Oh, good question. So my grandpa actually was a doctor. My grandpa was the chief of obstetrics and gynecology at Health Sciences at Women's in Winnipeg for years and years and years, and was really well respected. And like, he's been gone for 25 years, and we still have people say to us like, "Wow, is your last name Allardice? Oh my gosh." Your grandpa was my doctor. He was amazing, and it's just that lasting impact. So I actually always, for that reason, I wanted to go into medicine. And I have always, been good at science. I always thought it was really interesting. And then I got sort of further into, I wrote my MCAT. I was this close to applying to med school, and I was like, I don't actually think I want to be a doctor. It just wasn't entirely my thing. And that's the beauty of university, is you go through, your undergrad, you learn more about yourself. And that's why I was glad I took my time in my undergrad. I did my honors degree in 6 years. And, I figured out, nope, I didn't actually want to be a doctor. I was really good at critical thinking and problem solving, and I liked the sort of the bigger picture. And I thought, no, you know what? I had a professor that sort of steered me in the right direction towards research, and I've never looked back.
That's awesome. So now it appears we're running a bit out of time. So Meagan, is there any parting advice you'd like to impart on our viewers and listeners?
I I think more so just, don't try and have everything set out in front of you. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have your career figured out, or,
Mm-hmm.
what you're going to do with your degree. If you get a science degree, you're going to get a half decent job. A lot of the time it's getting through your degree and figuring out what you want to do at the end of the day when you have your degree, right? You don't have to go into it and have, I'm gonna be a researcher, I'm gonna work in this lab, because that's not how life works.
Yeah.
Even though everyone always asks us, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Like, I am halfway through my master's degree and I'm still not entirely sure what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I know I love research,
Mm-hmm.
but what field am I going to work in? I'm not entirely sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, we spend so much time worrying about that, and I don't think that it's that important. I think you need to figure out what you're interested in, figure out what you're good at, figure
Mm-hmm.
out what you like, and then follow it and find a job that you like and that you're good at, and you're going to be fine,
Yeah.
right? I think there's so many ways you can go. So don't even just try and point yourself in one direction. Figure out what you like and follow that.
Yeah. So I guess you could say figure out your short term and the long term will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have your options in the back of your mind. Talk to people that are, in those fields, or talk to people
Mm-hmm.
that that work in fields that you're interested in. Like, get some options. But yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Figure out what you're
Yeah.
good at, figure out what you like, and then follow the road and have fun with it.
It's absolutely wonderful. Miss Meagan Allardice, thank you for being here. Now make
Thank
sure
you
to
for
let
having
us
me.
know what you guys think down in the comments or on our socials at BRSF underscore MB on Instagram and Bison Fair on Twitter. Make sure to like and subscribe for all the latest news in STEM and all the best science fair tips, and we'll see you here next time on STEMcasts. Bye bye.